Welcome to a very special tour. Today, we're following the yellow brick road, not to the Emerald City, but to the final resting places of the people who brought it to life. The 1939 film The Wizard of Oz is one of the most beloved movies ever made, a picture that has enchanted every generation since it premiered more than 85 years ago. The actors, the director, the songwriter, even the author whose book started it all, they're all part of this journey. 14 stops, 14 stories. From the hills of Hollywood to a quiet cemetery in Queens, New York. Let's begin where the biggest name on our tour now rests, Hollywood Forever Cemetery, right in the heart of Los Angeles. If there is one voice that defines the Wizard of Oz, it belongs to Judy Garland, born Frances Ethel Gumm in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. In 1922, she was performing almost before she could walk. She and her older sisters toured the vaudeville circuit as the Gumm Sisters. And by the time little Frances was 13 years old, she had a contract with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The studio renamed her Judy Garland, and a legend was born. At MGM, Judy became one of the studio's most reliable young stars. She was paired with Mickey Rooney in a string of popular pictures, Babes in Arms, Love Finds Andy Hardy. But it was the role of Dorothy Gale in The Wizard of Oz that would define her forever. She was just 16 when she sang Over the Rainbow, and the song became inseparable from the woman who sang it. The American Film Institute would later rank it as the greatest movie song of all time. For her work in Oz and Babes in Arms, Judy received a special Academy Juvenile Award. She went on to earn 2 more Oscar nominations as an adult, for A Star is Born in 1954 and for Judgment at Nuremberg in 1961. Her 1961 concert recording, Judy at Carnegie Hall, won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year. She also received a special Tony Award in 1952 for a historic run at the Palace Theater in New York. Judy Garland could do it all: sing, act, make you laugh, make you cry. And she did it with an emotional intensity that audiences found irresistible and heartbreaking in equal measure. Off-screen, her life was turbulent. The studio system had been hard on her from childhood, and she struggled with the consequences for the rest of her days. She was married 5 times. She was fired from MGM. She mounted comebacks that were thrilling and collapses that were painful. Through it all, that voice never lost its power to stop a room cold. In June of 1969, while living in London, Judy Garland was found dead of an accidental overdose of barbiturates. She was 47 years old. She was originally laid to rest at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. But in 2017, nearly 50 years after her death, her children, Liza Minnelli, Lorna Luft, and Joey Luft, had her remains relocated here to Hollywood Forever so the family could one day be together. She now rests in a pavilion bearing her name. It feels right that Dorothy finally came home. Just a short walk from Judy's pavilion, also here at Hollywood Forever, we find the grave of Victor Fleming, the man who directed The Wizard of Oz. Fleming is one of the most curious figures in Hollywood history. In 1939 alone, he was the credited director on 2 of the most popular films ever made, The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind. He won the Academy Award for Best Director for the latter. Yet today, his name is far less recognized than many of his contemporaries. Fleming started out as an automobile mechanic and race car driver before bluffing his way into the film industry as a cameraman around 1911. During World War I, he served as chief cinematographer for President Woodrow Wilson at the Versailles Peace Conference. Back in Hollywood, he became a trusted studio craftsman, directing Clark Gable in Red Dust, Spencer Tracy in Captains Courageous, and Gary Cooper in The Virginian, the film that made Cooper a star. When MGM's production of The Wizard of Oz ran into trouble, the studio had already cycled through 2 other directors. Fleming was brought in to steady the ship. He had never made a fantasy film or a musical before, but he rose to the challenge. He spent roughly 4 months on the picture before being pulled away, mid-production, to take over the equally troubled Gone with the Wind. King Vidor quietly finished the final sequences of Oz, including the black and white Kansas scenes, but only Fleming received director's credit. Fleming died of a heart attack on January 6, 1949, near Cottonwood, Arizona. He was 59. He did not live to see The Wizard of Oz become the cultural institution it is today. That happened largely through annual television broadcasts starting in 1956. Before we leave Hollywood forever, there's one more stop you won't want to miss, and this one has 4 legs. Near the Cathedral Mausoleum, not far from where Mickey Rooney is interred, you'll find a memorial dedicated to Toto, or rather to the dog who played Toto. Her real name was Terry, and she was a female Cairn Terrier born in 1933. Her original owners abandoned her at Carl Spitz's Hollywood dog training school when they couldn't pay the boarding bill. Spitz kept her, trained her, and turned her into one of the most accomplished animal actors in Hollywood. Terry appeared in more than a dozen films, working with the likes of Shirley Temple and Spencer Tracy before landing the role of a lifetime. On The Wizard of Oz set, Terry earned $125 a week, more than many of the actors playing Munchkins. During filming, one of the Winky guards accidentally stepped on her paw and broke it. While she recovered, Judy Garland cared for her and reportedly tried to adopt her, but Spitz wouldn't part with his star performer. After the film's enormous success, Spitz officially changed the dog's name to Toto. Terry, now Toto, continued working until 1945, when she died at the age of 11. Spitz buried her on his ranch in Studio City. But in 1958, the construction of the Ventura Freeway obliterated the property, and Toto's grave along with it. For decades, there was no place for fans to pay their respects. Then, in 2011, a group of devoted admirers raised funds for a proper memorial, and Hollywood Forever donated the plot. The memorial was dedicated that June with a rendition of Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and L. Frank Baum's great-grandson in attendance. It's a fitting tribute to a little dog who earned more screen immortality than most humans ever will. Speaking of L. Frank Baum, our next stop takes us about 10 miles northeast to Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, where the man who dreamed up the land of Oz is buried. Lyman Frank Baum was born in Chittenango, New York in 1856. He was a restless soul who tried his hand at a remarkable number of occupations before finding his calling: poultry farming, newspaper editing, running a general store in the Dakota Territory, even selling axle grease. None of it stuck. What did stick was his gift for spinning tales. He had been making up stories for children his entire life, and in 1900 he published The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The book was an immediate sensation, the best-selling children's book of that year, and it launched a franchise of 14 Oz novels that Baum would write over the next 2 decades. The legend goes that when a child once asked Baum what the name of his magical land was, he glanced around the room and spotted a filing cabinet labeled O through Z. Whether or not that story is true, the name stuck, and so did the world he built around it. Baum moved to Hollywood in 1910, drawn by the young film industry, and he even produced a series of Oz films himself, though none achieved lasting success. He died on May 6, 1919, at the age of 62, from a stroke, 20 years before MGM would transform his creation into one of the most watched films in history. His wife, Maud Gage Baum, who had fiercely protected the Oz legacy, rests beside him here at Forest Lawn. While we're here at Forest Lawn, Glendale, let's visit 2 more members of the Oz family who ended up remarkably close to each other. In the Great Mausoleum, in the Columbarium of Security, rest the ashes of Clara Blandick, the actress who played Auntie M. Clara Blandick had one of the more unusual origin stories in Hollywood. She was born Clara Blanchard Dickey in 1876, not in a hospital, not in a home, but aboard her father's merchant ship docked in the harbor of Hong Kong. She created her stage name by combining the first syllables of Blanchard and Dickey. She spent decades as a dependable character actress on Broadway and in Hollywood, appearing in well over 100 films, usually as mothers, aunts, and grandmothers. She played Aunt Polly in the 1930 Tom Sawyer and again in Huckleberry Finn the following year. Her role as Auntie M in The Wizard of Oz came late in her career. She filmed all her scenes in a single week. Yet those few minutes of screen time, the warmth of her face as she calls for Dorothy, the worry and the love, are burned into the memory of everyone who has seen the film. Blandick retired from acting in 1950. Through the 1950s, her health deteriorated severely. She suffered from excruciating arthritis and was losing her eyesight. On April 15, 1962, after returning home from Palm Sunday church services, Clara Blandick ended her own life. She was 85 years old. She left behind a note that read in part, "I am now about to make the great adventure. I cannot endure this agonizing pain any longer." Just yards away from Clara Blandick's ashes, here in the same section of the Great Mausoleum, rest the ashes of Charlie Grapewin, her on-screen husband, Uncle Henry, Charles Ellsworth. Grapewin had one of the longest careers of anyone on this tour. Born in Xenia, Ohio in 1869, he ran away from home as a young man to become an acrobat and trapeze artist in a traveling circus. He even toured with P.T. Barnum. From there, he transitioned to vaudeville, then to the legitimate stage, and finally to motion pictures. He appeared in the original 1903 Broadway production of The Wizard of Oz, a full 36 years before he would appear in the film version. Grapewin was a familiar face at MGM in the 1930s and 40s. Beyond Uncle Henry, he is well remembered as Grandpa Joad in John Ford's The Grapes of Wrath, alongside Henry Fonda, and as the title character in the 1941 film of Tobacco Road. In the early 40s, he also had a recurring role as Inspector Queen in the Ellery Queen mystery series. Charlie Grapewin died on February 2, 1956, at the age of 86. He'd been acting for more than half a century. Now we'll head west across Los Angeles to Culver City, to Holy Cross Cemetery, where two of Dorothy's beloved traveling companions rest not far from each other. Let's find the Scarecrow first. Ray Bolger was born Raymond Wallace Bolger in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston in 1904. His family was of Irish descent, and he grew up watching vaudeville shows, which lit a fire in him early. After working at a peanut company, a bank, and an insurance office, he finally followed his dream and became a dancer. He formed a vaudeville act called Sanford and Bolger, and by 1926 he was performing at the legendary Palace Theater in New York. His rubber-limbed improvisational style of dance won him Broadway roles throughout the 30s, most notably the lead in Rodgers and Hart's On Your Toes in 1936. When MGM cast The Wizard of Oz, Bolger was originally assigned the role of the Tin Man. He was not happy about it. The Tin Man costume was rigid and offered almost no room for the kind of floppy, loose-jointed dancing Bolger was known for. He lobbied the studio to let him switch to the Scarecrow, a role that could showcase his physical gifts. The studio agreed, and the switch was made. Buddy Ebsen, who had been slated for the Scarecrow, moved to the Tin Man, with consequences we'll get to shortly. Bolger's Scarecrow is one of the most physically inventive performances in film history. He made it look as though his legs truly were stuffed with straw, wobbling and buckling while still hitting every mark. The makeup, however, left permanent lines on his face, a souvenir he carried for the rest of his life. After Oz, Bolger continued working in film, television, and on stage for decades. He hosted his own TV variety show in the early 50s. When asked if he received residuals from the annual television broadcasts of The Wizard of Oz, he famously replied, "No, just immortality. I'll settle for that." Ray Bolger was the last of the principal Oz cast members to pass away. He died of bladder cancer on January 15, 1987, 5 days after his 83rd birthday. He and his wife Gwendolyn, married for 57 years, rest together here at Holy Cross. Nearby in this same cemetery rests another of Dorothy's companions, Jack Haley, the Tin Man. John Joseph Haley Jr. was born in Boston on August 10, 1898, so he and Bolger were both Boston boys, both Catholic, both vaudeville veterans. Haley's father died in a shipwreck before Jack was born, and his older brother, a musician, died of tuberculosis at 21. Despite this difficult start, young Jack found his way into show business through song and dance comedy on the vaudeville circuit. One of his closest friends was Fred Allen, who would mention Mr. Jacob Haley of Newton Highlands, Massachusetts on the radio for years. Haley made his way into films in the late 20s and found steady work at 20th Century Fox, including a memorable role in Alexander's Ragtime Band in 1938. When Buddy Ebsen fell gravely ill from the aluminum dust in the Tin Man's makeup, Fox loaned Haley to MGM as a replacement. For Haley, the studio switched the makeup from powder to paste, but even the paste caused a painful eye infection that sidelined him for several days. The Tin Man's 40-pound costume was so rigid that Haley couldn't sit down while wearing it. He relied on a leaning board to rest between takes. Years later, he told an interviewer that fans assumed making the film was fun, but the reality was quite different. Still, the softness he brought to the character, that gentle voice he later said he borrowed from reading bedtime stories to his children, gave the Tin Man an emotional warmth that resonates to this day. Here's a wonderful connection. Jack Haley's son, Jack Haley Jr., grew up to become a film producer and director. He married Liza Minnelli, the daughter of Judy Garland, in 1974, briefly uniting the families of Dorothy and the Tin Man. They divorced in 1979, but the younger Haley and Minnelli remained friends for life. Jack Haley Jr. is buried right here beside his father. Haley suffered a heart attack on June 1, 1979, and died 5 days later at the age of 80. At his funeral, held at the Church of the Good Shepherd, the eulogy was delivered by Ray Bolger, who concluded with the words, "It's going to be awfully lonely on that yellow brick road now, Jack." From the sunshine of Southern California, let's travel all the way across the country to Queens, New York, where the Cowardly Lion found his final resting place. Union Field Cemetery in the Ridgewood neighborhood is where Bert Lahr is buried. Irving Lahrheim was born on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in 1895, the son of German-Jewish immigrants. He dropped out of school at 15 to join a juvenile vaudeville act, adopting the stage name Bert Lahr. He worked his way up through burlesque and onto the Broadway stage, where he became one of the great comic performers of the era. He starred in Ziegfeld's Revues, brought down the house in shows like Hold Everything and Dubarry Was a Lady, and in 1956 he originated the role of Estragon in the first American production of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, a remarkable leap for a man best known for slapstick and pratfalls. But of course, it's the Cowardly Lion that made Bert Lahr immortal. His costume was made of real lion fur, and under the blazing Technicolor lights, it was unbearably hot. None of that discomfort shows on screen. Lahr's performance is a tour de force of physical comedy and genuine emotion. His delivery of "If I Were King of the Forest" is at once hilarious and oddly moving. He ad-libbed extensively, and the other cast members, especially Judy Garland, frequently couldn't get through their scenes without dissolving into laughter. After Oz, Lahr found it hard to escape the lion's shadow. He once joked, "That was my one big Hollywood hit, but in a way, it hurt my picture career. After that, I was typecast as a lion, and there just aren't many parts for lions." He worked steadily on stage and television, and in the 1960s, he became the well-paid spokesman for a brand of potato chips. In the fall of 1967, Lahr was filming The Night They Raided Minsky's when he fell ill. He had been working late on a cold, damp night in a New York studio. The newspapers reported pneumonia as the cause of death, but his son John later revealed that Lahr had been suffering from cancer he never knew he had. He died on December 4, 1967, at the age of 72. When Judy Garland learned the news, she was about to go on stage in Las Vegas, she dedicated that night's performance of Over the Rainbow to the memory of my beloved Cowardly Lion. Our next stop doesn't take us to a cemetery at all, but to a quiet piece of land in Dutchess County, New York, near the town of Amenia. This is where Margaret Hamilton's ashes were scattered, the woman who played the Wicked Witch of the West. Margaret Brainerd Hamilton was born in Cleveland, Ohio, in 1902. Before she ever set foot on a Hollywood soundstage, she was a kindergarten teacher, certified at the Wheelock School in Boston. She came to acting almost by accident, accompanying a friend to an audition and getting hired herself. Once the bug bit, it bit hard, and she built a long career playing sharp-tongued spinsters and nosy neighbors with names that sound like they belong in a storybook: Mrs. Clopplebobbler, Hester Crabwell, Aunt Huddy. Her casting as the Wicked Witch came after 7 years of reliable character work in Hollywood. Despite standing just 5 feet tall, Hamilton had a commanding presence that made her terrifying on screen. Her green makeup, which contained copper, couldn't be ingested, so during filming she survived on a liquid diet. In the scene where the witch vanishes from Munchkinland in a burst of fire, the trapdoor jammed on the second take, and Hamilton's costume and makeup ignited. She suffered painful burns to her face and hands that kept her off the set for 6 weeks. The irony is that by all accounts, Margaret Hamilton was one of the kindest people in Hollywood. She remained passionately committed to education her entire life, serving on school boards and volunteering with children's therapy groups. In the 1970s, she became warmly familiar to a new generation as Cora, the friendly shopkeeper in a series of Maxwell House coffee commercials. She also appeared on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in the mid-70s, specifically so Fred Rogers could show children that the Wicked Witch was just a character played by a nice lady in a costume. Hamilton died of a heart attack on May 16, 1985, in Salisbury, Connecticut. She was 82. Her body was cremated, and her ashes were scattered over her property here in Amenia, in the Hudson Valley she loved. Continuing our journey through New York, let's drive south to Westchester County and the community of Valhalla. Here, at the stately Kensico Cemetery, we find the grave of Billie Burke, Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. Mary William Ethelbert Appleton Burke, what a name, was born in Washington, D.C. in 1884. Her father was a singer and clown who worked for the Barnum and Bailey Circus, and the family traveled extensively before settling in London. Young Billie made her stage debut on the London stage in 1903 and crossed the Atlantic to become a major Broadway star by the end of that decade. In 1914, she married one of the most powerful men in show business, Florenz Ziegfeld Jr., the impresario behind the legendary Ziegfeld Follies. Their marriage was glamorous and volatile, and when Ziegfeld died in 1932, broken by the financial devastation of the Depression, Billie threw herself into film work to support herself and her daughter. She carved out a niche playing fluttery, scatterbrained society wives, most memorably in the Topper film series with Cary Grant. Her performance in Merrily We Live earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Then, in 1938, she was cast as Glinda in The Wizard of Oz. She was 54 years old at the time, 18 years older than Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch. That bit of casting still surprises people. Burke's Glinda is all warmth and sparkle and that distinctive, wavering, high-pitched voice. She turned down the role of Aunt Pittypat in Gone with the Wind, another picture shooting around the same time, and the actress who took the role was specifically instructed to play it in a Billie Burke-ish manner. Billie Burke continued working into the 1950s, appearing in Father of the Bride with Spencer Tracy and Elizabeth Taylor. Her final film was Sergeant Rutledge, a 1960 John Ford Western. She died on May 14, 1970, in Los Angeles at the age of 85, and was brought back east to be buried here at Kensico, not far from where she had lived during her years as the Queen of Broadway. From Valhalla, let's head south into New York City, to the borough of Brooklyn, where one of America's most historic cemeteries sprawls over nearly 500 acres of rolling green hills. This is Greenwood Cemetery, and it's where we find the man behind the curtain himself, Frank Morgan, the Wizard of Oz. Born Francis Philip Wupperman in Manhattan in 1890, Frank Morgan came from a family of 11 children. His family's business was importing Angostura bitters, the aromatic seasoning found in cocktail bars around the world. Acting ran in the family too. His older brother Ralph Morgan also became a successful performer and served as president of the Screen Actors Guild. Frank made his Broadway debut in 1914 and transitioned to films in the silent era. But it was in the sound pictures of the 30s and 40s that he became a beloved character actor at MGM. His specialty was the befuddled but good-hearted older gentleman, a persona so popular that MGM put him under a lifetime contract. He received 2 Oscar nominations, Best Actor for The Affairs of Cellini in 1934 and Best Supporting Actor for Tortilla Flat in 1942. In The Wizard of Oz, Morgan played 5 distinct roles, Professor Marvel, the Emerald City gatekeeper, the cabbie, the palace guard, and the wizard himself. W.C. Fields was reportedly considered for the part, but Morgan campaigned vigorously and won it. His co-star Margaret Hamilton once said that the scene where the wizard hands out gifts, a diploma for the Scarecrow, a ticking heart for the Tin Man, a medal for the Cowardly Lion, always made her tearful, because Frank Morgan was just like that in real life, very generous. There's a famous story connected to Morgan and the film. The wardrobe department acquired a second-hand coat from a thrift shop for his Professor Marvel costume. According to legend, a label inside the coat bore the name of L. Frank Baum, the author of the Oz books, and Baum's widow confirmed it had been her husband's. Film historians debate whether the story is true or apocryphal, but as one Oz scholar put it, if it didn't happen, it should have. Morgan was widely known to be fond of his drink. Colleagues recalled that he sometimes brought a small briefcase to the set that was equipped as a minibar. He died in his sleep of a heart attack on September 18, 1949, at the age of 59. He had been filming Annie, Get Your Gun, and Lewis Calhern was brought in to replace him. Like Victor Fleming, Frank Morgan did not live to see The Wizard of Oz become the phenomenon it is today. His tombstone here at Greenwood carries both his stage name and his real one, Whooperman. Our next destination is just a short drive north of New York City, to Hartsdale in Westchester County. Ferncliff Cemetery is the resting place of Harold Arlen, the man who composed Over the Rainbow. Born Hyman, Arluck in Buffalo, New York, in 1905, Harold Arlen was the son of a cantor at a Buffalo synagogue. Music was in his blood from the start, but young Hyman wasn't drawn to the cantorial tradition. He was fascinated by jazz. He formed his first band, Hyman Arluck's Snappy Trio, at age 15, and left home at 16 to pursue music in New York. Here's a wonderful detail. In those early years in New York, Arlen shared an apartment with a young dancer from Boston named Ray Bolger, the future Scarecrow. The two remained lifelong friends, and when MGM hired Arlen and lyricist E.Y. Yip Harburg to write the songs for The Wizard of Oz, it was a reunion of old roommates on the same picture. Arlen composed over 500 songs in his career, and many of them became standards of the Great American Songbook. Stormy Weather, That Old Black Magic, Blues in the Night, Come Rain or Come Shine, Get Happy, It's Only a Paper Moon. But the one that towered above them all was Over the Rainbow. The melody came to Arlen on a car ride through Hollywood, and he pulled over to jot it down. The studio tried to cut the song from the film on 3 separate occasions. They thought it slowed down the picture. Arlen fought to keep it in, and thank goodness he did. It won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, and the Recording Industry Association of America and the National Endowment for the Arts later voted it the #1 song of the 20th century. Arlen also composed 2 of Judy Garland's other signature songs, The Man That Got Away for the 1954 version of A Star Is Born, and Last Night When We Were Young. At her famous 1961 Carnegie Hall concert, Garland acknowledged Arlen in the audience and invited him to stand for an ovation. The later years of Arlen's life were difficult. After his wife Anya died of a brain tumor in 1970, he became increasingly reclusive, withdrawing to his apartment on Central Park West. He developed Parkinson's disease and eventually cancer. Harold Arlen died on April 23, 1986, at the age of 81. He is buried here at Ferncliff beside Anya. Irving Berlin, asked to speak at Arlen's memorial, summed him up simply, "He wasn't as well known as some of us, but he was a better songwriter than most of us, and he will be missed by all of us." There's one more connection worth noting. Ferncliff Cemetery is where Judy Garland was originally interred after her death in 1969, the same building where Arlen now rests. For nearly 50 years, the composer and the singer who made his greatest song immortal were neighbors in the same mausoleum, until Judy's children moved her to Hollywood forever in 2017. For our final stop, let's return to Southern California, to Pacific Crest Cemetery in Redondo Beach. This is where we find a man who was almost in The Wizard of Oz, a man whose brush with the picture nearly killed him, and whose career went on to bring joy to millions anyway. This is the resting place of Buddy Ebsen. Christian Rudolph Ebsen Jr. was born in Belleville, Illinois in 1908 and raised in Orlando, Florida, where his father ran a dance studio. Buddy and his sister Vilma became a popular dance team in New York in the early 30s, and Hollywood came calling. He danced with Shirley Temple in Captain January, with Eleanor Powell in Broadway Melody of 1936, and with Judy Garland herself in Broadway Melody of 1938, a year before they would be reunited on the set of Oz. When MGM began casting The Wizard of Oz, Ebsen was originally assigned the role of the Scarecrow. Then Ray Bolger lobbied to play the Scarecrow instead, and Ebsen was reassigned to the Tin Man. He didn't object. He recorded all of his songs, completed weeks of rehearsal, and began filming. 9 days into production, something went terribly wrong. The aluminum dust used in the Tin Man's silver makeup was coating his lungs. Ebsen began experiencing shortness of breath, muscle cramps, and body aches. He was rushed to the hospital and placed in an oxygen tent. He spent 2 weeks hospitalized and another month recuperating. The studio did not publicize what had happened. Even Jack Haley, who replaced him, wasn't told the real reason for Ebsen's departure until years later. For the rest of his life, Ebsen dealt with breathing problems he attributed to that damned movie. But his career was far from over. In the 1950s, he played Davy Crockett's sidekick George Russell in Walt Disney's enormously popular television miniseries. Then, in 1962, he was cast as Jed Clampett in The Beverly Hillbillies, one of the highest-rated shows in television history. He played the lovable Ozark millionaire for 9 seasons. After that, he starred as the title character in the detective series Barnaby Jones for another 8 years. 2 decades of primetime television, all because Hollywood gave him a second chance after Oz nearly took him out. Despite the makeup incident that nearly cost him his life, Buddy Ebsen outlived every credited cast member of The Wizard of Oz by many years. He died of respiratory failure on July 6, 2003, at the age of 95. If you listen carefully to the film's soundtrack, you can still catch traces of Ebsen. His voice remains in certain reprises of "We're Off to See the Wizard," his Midwestern accent distinguishable from Haley's Boston one. A ghost in the machine, forever walking that yellow brick road. And so our tour comes to an end. 14 lives, all connected by a single film made in 1939. From the girl who sang Over the Rainbow to the man who nearly died wearing silver paint. From the author who dreamed up Oz to the little dog who stole every scene she was in, they all left their mark. The Wizard of Oz endures because they did. Thanks for walking with us today.